Hello, welcome back. This is Morris Timba, and today I'm going to show you how we can brace this simple portal frame you are seeing on the screen here using COMOSYS. Now, if I bring it close, the part we want to brace now are the rafters. We want to brace these. These are the rafters, in case you don't know what a rafter is. So these are the rafters. These will be carrying the purlins, and these will be carrying the roof sheets. Now we want to brace these rafters. Let me just rotate that. So this is how it looks. Now we want to brace all the rafters. Now to get started, first of all, I have to define a workflow, and the workflow is very simple. We want to put some points at the apex here, and put a point at the haunch here, then offset these points at a particular distance, then this at a distance. Then we get the midpoint between these 2 points, then offset this midpoint here at a distance, then we get. Let me just show you how we can do that. I'll come to edit here, then come to points. I'll click on that drop down arrow and pick on the point. Now I want to snap at the, I'm looking for a snap on the top of this apex. I'll snap on that spot, and if I zoom close, you can see I have a point there, and I'll move all the way down here and place a point. And as it is now, I cannot locate the exact location. Now let me just right click and come to interrupt, so that I'll be able to engage a rotation command. Now I'll right hold click on my mouse and rotate that particular point. So I'll rotate that to a position that I will be able to see it clearly. Let me just rotate that. I want to snap at this point. Now I'll come to point here. I'll click on drop down arrow and select on a point. Then I'll snap on that particular point right there. Now I want to offset this point upward by 300 or 400 there. Now, prior to giving it an orientation or give it an offset upward, this rafter, make sure the XYZ plane is in line with the slope of our rafter. First of all, let's check that if it is the orientation is correct. Now, if it is not correct, you have to define the orientation or place, or make sure the rafter slopes with your XYZ plane. How do we do that? We'll come to view, then come to more options here and pick to surface. I'll pick on the surface here. So my XYZ plane will orient itself with the slope of my rafter. Now, if I come to this point, I select on that point, then I'll right click and come to special copy. I'll pick on linear. Now, along the X is the arrow red, and the green one is a y-axis. Now we want to offset this point along the x-axis. What we do, we make sure everything is 0 here along the XYZ, except the x-axis going upward. So x-axis will feed 300 right there. Then click OK. So let's zoom out. You'll be able to see we have a point at a distance of 3 millimeter from this particular point. We want to do the same thing here. I'm going to select this point. If you can see it clearly, I've selected that spot. Then I'll right click and come to special copy and pick on linear. Now I want to copy this along the x-axis, but this time round is against the direction, or the positive direction of the x-axis. Now what do? We'll prefix this dimension with a negative sign there. So I'll come here and click copy. So if you zoom out, you'll be able to see we have a point here. Now let's close this. Now I want to get a midpoint between this point and this point. Now to get the midpoint between the 2 points, we'll come to edit once again and come to and click on this drop down arrow and pick dividing points. Though there are some options here. We have dividing extension point, parallel points, but let's first of all work with dividing points. Now we want to divide this point and this point so that we get the midpoint of the 2. So the moment I click on that, I'll be able to get midpoint here. Now I want to select on this midpoint, right click and come to special copy and click linear, and I want to give it an offset of 150 and 150 along the x-axis. So I'll feed in here 150 right there and click OK. So once that has been done, it has been given an offset against the x-axis. Now I want to add another point, and I want to add another offset. So instead of repeating the same thing, just copy the midpoint, the initial midpoint, then pick it from this particular point and place it here. So we have a point right there. So we want to copy this, though there's another way on how we can offset this point, but let's just adapt to this particular workflow. Then as you learn so many other workflow on tackling this particular task. Now, let me just select both of these points that I have just picked. I'm going to select on this, and that. I want to transfer those points on the other end. Now I'm going to pick this one also. Now I'll right click and come to copy. I'll come to copy right there. I'll select on linear. Now I can either snap it on top of this rafter, or I can just zoom at the bottom end here and make sure I see the red snap means I'm in the right intersection point. So I'll select on that, then move all the way to this particular point. Just mouse over this until you see that red symbol of snap, then click on that spot. Then just click copy, then close that. So the moment you've done so, you'll be able to see we have the points in this place. So we want to place our bracings. So we'll come to steel, and we want to place our bracings we're using these points as guidelines. The reason why I'm placing these points just to guide us on the exact locations where our members should be bolted or welded on. Now I'll come to beam to select a member there. Now I'll come to that particular point and move all the way to this particular point here, and we have it there. Now we want to rotate this member so that we want the brace or the gusset plate to be welded at the back of this particular member. Let me just click on that and show you what I want to do. So I want to rotate this so that the back flashes with the flange of our rafter. Now I'll press Control Q so that it rotates. Then I'll press Control W and press Control W, and that has been done. Now I'll do a similar thing the other end. I'll come here and snap on this particular spot here, then move all the way to this particular spot. So we'll do the same thing here. Let me just rotate that. Let me show my point of interest, then rotate that. So the moment I do so, let me just rotate that so that we see it clearly. So I want to rotate this. I want to rotate that, then press Control W, and that's it. So if you take a look, there's a meeting point here, which is some sort of clash, but I'll show you how we can correct that. So once you've done so, just select this member, select on that member, right click and come to copy, and move this member from this particular spot here where we placed our point, and come and place it here. We've just copied that into that location. So you can see we have another point there, we have another point here. So that's how you can brace that. So let me just select on that member and try rotate. So what we want to do right now is just on how we can customize the connection in the middle here. So to customize this location, I want just to show you using points as a guideline on how we can customize that. So let me just rotate this and place it in a position where I'll be able to see it clearly. So first of all, let's check the member size of this particular member. I'll double click on it, and you can see it is 60 by 60 by 4 millimeter thickness. Though you can always go to the catalog and select the appropriate. Though we have majority here, we have all the standards here. We have the Indian US standard, all Middle East is available on this catalog. Just close that, then come to close that, because this is the best profile of my choice. Now let me just show you how we can create a connection in between this to avoid a clashing or clash. Now I'll come to points once again just to guide us through. I'll come to point and pick on point that right there. So I'll come here and snap on that spot, and come here and snap on this particular spot. So once I've done so, I want to offset this. I want to offset this by 30 millimeter, and I want to offset this by 30 millimeter. So first of all, check whether the orientation of my XYZ plane is in the right place. So what I'll do, I'll come back and into view and pick on view here, pick more of options and pick on the surface, then I'll pick on that particular spot, right click and interrupt to terminate that command. Now I'll select on this point here, right click and come to copy and pick on, or just let's use move so that we don't crowd so many we don't need so many points. So we want every point to have a meaning or to be useful. Now I'll come to special point and pick on linear. So along the x-axis, though it's against the direction of x-axis, so we have to prefix that dimension with a negative sign. So we'll come to x-axis and feed in a negative sign. So we'll feed here 30 millimeter, and will be given an offset of 30 millimeter. Now we'll do the same thing here. Right click and come to special move here and pick on linear. Then this time round is positive. I mean, it is in the positive direction of x-axis, so we have to remove this prefix negative. So we'll go ahead and click move. So we have this member in place, and we'll close that. So I want to cut off this. I want to cut off this particular point clashing so that we can create a connection right there. So I'll come to edit. I'll come to edit here and come to frame edit. I'll pick on break frame. So I'll select the frame to break, then select on that particular point, then select on this, then pick on this particular point. So I've broken this member into three segments. So I want to get rid of the middle segment there. So I'll click yes to remove that segment here, that segment. Now I have this point already created. So once you've done so, there will be no point of, though we can do the same thing here, though we can just get rid of this so that we'll just be able to copy this member. Once we've created this connection, instead of doing the same thing here, just delete the top one, then do one thing, then copy. That one I think will be a time saver. Now we'll move ahead. But prior to that, let me just undo so that we want that part that we trimmed off to help us in putting some extra points. Now I'll come to point once again and pick on the point, then snap on that spot and snap on this point. Then I'll snap on this point once again, snap on that point once again. Now I want to offset this in the y direction, but on the negative orientation. So I'll select on that. So prior to that, this XYZ is not well oriented with the direction of this particular member. So what we'll do, we'll come to view and change our XYZ plane. I'll pick on the surface, so I'll select on that particular member. Right click and come to interrupt. So I'll select on this member here, right click and come to special move. I'll move that in the direction of X by negative 74 right there. That would be okay. So that will be done. So I'll select on this member, on this point, right click and come to copy and pick on this copy here and place it here. So we have a point here, we have a point here. The same thing can be done here. I'll select these points and select that point, right click and come to copy. Then I'll copy this point here to this particular point. So we have our points in place. Now, there's another thing we want to do. Since we have these points, now we can get rid of this particular mid segment. We can get rid of it. Now I'll come back to point I'll come back to point here and pick a point, place a point there, place a point here. So let me first of all get the dividing points of these members. So though we don't need it, but just for the good practice, so that we see the midpoint in here. Now we want to offset this backward by 60 millimeter. So I'll select this, I'll select the points and offset them back by 60 millimeter, then that one also by 60 millimeter. But first of all, make sure the XYZ plane is in orientation. The XYZ plane, make sure XYZ plane is in line with the orientation of this particular member. So to do that, always go back to view, then pick more options and pick surface. I want to orientate that with that surface. Now I'll select on that point here, press Control, select on that point, right click and come to special move, just give it a move offset. So make sure at any time you are doing an offset or copying a member, make sure only the plane you want to offset something from has the exact dimension, but the rest should remain at 0. So on x-axis, will feed a 60 millimeter, and on the y-axis will return at 0. So let's copy that and give it an OK. So we have that in place. So we can also add another offset. Maybe you can add another 30 millimeters so that we move it further. So that's okay. We'll do the same thing here. Select on this member. First of all, I can't see another point here, so I have to add another point. I'll come to edit, right click, click on point, then come to, let me just zoom so that we place a point right there. So we have a point. I'll come here and select the point here, then select this point. Right click and come to move, special move here, select on linear. So I want to move this along the x-axis by 90, because in the initial one we did an offset of 60, then we added another 30, so makes it a total of 90. So this time around, just prefix that 90 with press that 90 with the negative sign. So we click on that and we have it in place. So we want to create a polygon. We want to create a plate using polygon. So we want to connect this member with this member using a plate. So place a bolt here, and a bolt here. So let me just create a contour plate, and you can see what I'm going to do, what you're going to see right there. So I'll come to steel and pick on plate. So let me just create the contour plate from this spot. I'll snap on that spot, then snap on that spot, then move to that spot, then I'll move to this spot here. Then I'll come all the way to that spot, then come to this spot, then close my polygon right there. So you can see the plate has been created. So I'm creating this plate so that to avoid the collision of these two members. So I've divided this member into 3 segments. Then the middle segment of the same member I've deleted. Then I've created a connection between the two members. Now one member that has become 2 members. Now if you take a closer look, we can see this plate is clashing this member here. So let's first of all check the thickness of this particular plate. I double click on it. So if I double click on it, you'll be able to see this is 20 millimeter thick, which is wastage of material. You can use that, but you can't use that as a gusset plate to connect these 2 members. Now I'm going to change this to 6 millimeter, which will be okay, and click OK. We can just use as a default and click OK. So still, if I change that to 6 millimeter, you can still see there's a slight collision. So how do we get rid of that? Select this member, then press Control W. Press Control W again, so it will make it flash with that. So there'll be no collision. So from here, we can now place our bolt. We can press a bolt here and a bolt here. So to place a bolt there, let's first of all use points. Points is a very useful tool when we are detailing particular steel. We are detailing steel and concrete structures. Now I'll come to edit here and come to a point once again, and I want to use this time round, I want to use dividing points. I'll click on this point, then snap on that spot, then move all the way and snap on that spot. So I've gotten a midpoint here. So I want to create a midpoint between this point and this particular point. Then I'll come back again and click on that spot, snap on that spot, and move all the way to this particular spot. I've created a point right there. So instead of doing the same thing, just select on this point, right click and come to copy, select on this member, just zoom close so that you make sure you're snapping on the right spot. I've selected on that, then I'll snap on that. So we have a point here. So I want to add another one here so that I can have the best locations for adding my bolts. So I'll snap on that spot, then I'll snap on this spot, then move almost to the edge so that I get the midpoint of that end, and I got a point right there. So I want to add, or I can just do the same thing here. Right click and come to dividing points. I'll snap on that spot. Make sure you're accurate in picking up the points. I've picked on that. Then I want to snap at the midpoint of this particular gasket plate. So if I right click and interrupt that, so I want to place a bolt here, and a bolt here, and a bolt here, and a bolt here. Now, let's go back to steel so that we can access the bolt tool here. Then I'll pick on the bolt, select this, select that, and select that, and select that. Right click and click OK. Now, if I zoom out, you'll be able to see these points here. So I'll select this point and that point. Let me just zoom close so that I'll be accurate. So I have the point in place. So if I select this bolt and turn it around, you can see only one bolt is in the right position, though we can just retain that single bolt. So what we'll do, we'll just double click on the bolt here, then come to positions here and just to get rid of this 0 and click apply and give it an OK. So this one is in place, but you can just still double click on it and come to position and maybe prefix that by 20 and give a space, right click and click apply, and still we have a member there. So on the bolts side, let me come to settings here, and you can see the bolt diameter is 20 M20 is too big. Just give it 16 is okay. Give it apply and give it an OK. So I double click on once again so that this bolt can come closer to that end. So what we'll do, we'll come to positions here and maybe change this to 50. 50 will be okay and click OK. 40 will be okay. Let me just try 40 there. So if I click that, then try to rotate that. Our bolts are okay. We can double click, always double click and maybe add washer if you want washer, first washer and the third washer here, and just apply. So we have washers in place. So we can do the same thing, but just right clicking and coming to copy. Let's just try to copy this. Let's try to copy this on the other end. Let me just right click there. So the next thing we're going to do, just make sure you rotate that so that you'll be able to see this clearly. Right click and try to copy this. Make sure your snap is active prior to invoking any command. So it's not accurate, and what we're going to do once again, we just go back and do the same thing. Click on the plate, right click, and we want to bolt that to that. Make sure your accuracy is very useful. Now we've created a bolt right there. Now we want to add another bolt in the middle here, so we'll come to bolt, select this plate and that, right click, and we want to this time round to snap on this spot, on that spot, and snap on this particular spot. Let me just zoom closer, and you have that place in that member on the spot. So just right click on it. Let's try copy, and you can place that one right there. There's an error. So just double click on that, come to position, and You can change this to, first of all, check the position of x. So we have to add this to 50, negative 50, and try that. Let's give it a positive direction and try that. So that is in place. And if I double click once again and come to positions here, I can get rid of one bolt. So let's try and move this to that location manually. Select on that and come to move. So if I snap on this member, on this bolt here, and just try and paste it right there, or place it on that particular spot. So if I turn this round, you'll be able to see we have this member in place. So we can go ahead and also connect this member. I hope you've understood, or you followed the process that I've just followed. To though the workflows in creating this customized connection differ. This is my workflow, and if you find that very convenient, you can follow that. Now we want to connect this rafter to this member. Let me just select on it so that you can see that clearly. I'll come here. I'll come to beam. Let me just try and get the bracing tools here. I'll come to bracings connection, and I think bolted gusset plate will work. I'll select on that, select on the member, and select on that member, right click, and we have the connection in place. So there's nothing else. We'll go select on that, select on this, and right click, and connection has been created. And select on this, select on that, right click, and connection has been created. Select on this, select on that member, and connection has been created. So I'll do the same to the top here. Select on that, right click, and this has been created, but that one we'll have to adjust it later on. So instead of doing the same thing on top here, what we can do, we can just get rid of these members, get rid of that member. So we'll select everything here first of all. Let me just create a connection here. Select this and that, and we are done. Now, let me select that member. And first of all, I want to move this to these points. So to locate the points here, I have to change the draw type. And the draw type, I'll come to view, then I'll come to objects here, then I'll be able to locate this point. Though the point it's clear, it's right there. So you can, let me just go back where it was, control draw. So I'll right click and come to copy. So I'll copy this from this particular spot, from that spot, and move all the way to this spot here, to that spot there. So I have my braces in place. So I have this brace there, and I have this brace here. So there's some little modification we can do. Select on this member. I'll select on that. I want to adjust this member to touch the far end of the flange. So I'll come here and select on that. So this from here to here is 150. So this 150 will just feed on the x-axis. First of all, make sure everything is in the same orientation while doing this kind of modifications. First of all, let's just do with this with the default orientation of the XYZ, so that we see how it's going to behave. You see this how it will behave, because it will try to follow the orientation of the XYZ plane. So let's cancel that and click undo and come back to view. So under view, we'll come to more options here and pick on the surface. So I'll click on the top of the surface so that you can see the XYZ plane orientates itself with the slope of this particular rafter. Now go back to the plate, select the part you want to extend. I want to extend this to the same width to touch the other end of the flange. Now I'll come and adjust that, move plate edge by XYZ plane. I'll select on that, and I want to move this by 50 along the y-axis. So since the y-axis is pointing in the opposite direction, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to prefix this measurement with a negative sign. So I'll go ahead and click move, and it has moved. The same thing I'll do, I'll apply here, select, I want to modify that and I want to move this. So this time around it is moving, it is on the positive direction of the y-axis. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove that prefix of negative. So I'm going to click move. So that's it, and that's how you can do that. So we have our braces in place, and also you can check which parts will be assembled to which part. So if I select on this rafter, then if I right click and select assembly, you'll be able to see. If I show only selected, you'll be able to see these gusset plates will be welded on top of the rafters. So this will be carried direct to site and will be assembled right there. Right click and show all. Now I want to copy all this. Let me just press Control and copy all this and mirror the other end. And prior to initiating the mirror command, make sure the XYZ plane is in the right location. So what you can do, just shift that to global, shift to global position. So I've selected on this and select on that. So now I want to define my mirror point. I'll right click and come to special copy right here and pick on mirror. So I had already defined my mirror point. Just select a point here and select a point there. That will be my mirror. So I'll come to options here and pick run. So I'll give it some time to run the command and click here close, so that I'll be able to see what has been mirrored at the other end. So everything has been mirrored, but it still needs some modification because there's some information not coming out clearly when this is mirrored. So I'll go back and do that. I'll check whether this will be okay. I'll come back and click move, and it has moved. And come back here and modify this and give it an OK. And select on that and select the part you want to modify and come here and click move. So it will not move because the movement is in the opposite direction. So we have to prefix this dimension with the negative sign. So if I click move, it will be able to move in the right way. So we have that in place. So what we want to do now, we have to select everything here. Let me just turn it into the right position and select all this. So the moment I've selected on all that, I'll come here, right click and come to copy, and I'll snap on that spot and move all the way to this particular end here. I'll snap on that spot and give some time to copy everything, and you can see everything has been copied. So anything that will need modification will be done, and that will be done need modification. This will need modification because the reason why the XYZ plane has changed, so it will revert back to its default position prior to changes effected. So I'll copy it from this position here, and I've double copied, so I'll just undo that and come back here, right click and come back, and we want to initiate the copy command once again. So I'll select everything here. Make sure you zoom and make sure everything has been selected. So let me just open a window, a curate window, so that I carry everything along. Let me just select this once again. So I've selected everything there. I'll right click and come to copy. Then I want to copy it from this bottom end here. And since I had copied one here, let me just add another one there, because I had double copied in the same place. Now I want to jump this bay and jump this bay and place another bracing here. So again, I'll do the similar thing here. I'll jump this bay and jump this bay and place another bracing right there. So if you take a closer look, we have our braces in place. So whichever part that needs modification, you can just follow and try and modify, because the reason why it's changing, because the moment you mirror or copy, the positions, the XYZ position changes, so the macro will try to revert back to its default position until you change it to follow the same orientation of that particular position in relation to XYZ plane. Now, if I bring this close, you can actually notice that, because this hasn't adapted to the adjustment that it was copied along with. So I'll select on that member, pick on that, and try and adjust this. If you click adjust, it will just respond. I'll select on that. If I pick on that and try and adjust that, it will respond, and we'll just try to modify that bit by bit. So I'll do the same thing here and select on that and pick on adjustment and select that. So if that's not responding, just to make sure you remove the prefix negative and click OK and do the same thing there. So that's how you can brace. So that's it. And thanks a lot, and let's meet on the next presentation or tutorial on how we can place the tie beam and also the vertical bracings along uh, along the base or on each base. The base I'm talking about the bracings in between the columns. These are the vertical bracings. So I'll show you how we can also fix that, and also how we can auto connect on how we can create auto connection maybe on vertical braces. For the time being, let's meet then. I'm Maurice Dimba, and don't forget to subscribe. And bye bye.